This Week in Startups is brought to you by Walker Corporate Law, a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs. Visit them at walkercorporatelaw.com. And Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com. Enter offer code TWIST at checkout to get 10% off.
All right, so listen, there's few people in the industry who I think really, do what I always say is, do the work and take the work seriously. I see a lot of my fellow investors who I don't think take the work as seriously as the founders take their work. Being an investor, I think, is a great privilege, especially when you've been on that other side of the table and been the founder. Very, very few examples where I see investors who work harder or as hard as the founders that they invest in. Jason's one of those rare exceptions, I think, of the people who take the investing seriously. They do the work, and they take the work seriously. So I'm really happy that you're here. I know you're very busy. Congratulations on raising the new fund. So everybody give a warm welcome for Jason Lemkin.
Jason kind of said before, I think he was talking about seed versus Series A, but I'm even nicher than that. I'm late seed in my mind. So that means the revenue somewhere between a few thousand, ideally at least 5,000 a month, and kind of maxes out maybe to 100K a month. Because once you hit there, if you're in the Bay Area, you're getting an 8-figure check, and I'm out, right? And to back into that, and I just raised a $70 million new fund, as Jason said. I'm this sheet. I kind of had a joke going on Twitter. I called myself an associate, but I actually can write a check. I am the only person with check writing authority at the moment in the 70 million. And I'm just writing my first $3.5 million check tomorrow, which is large for me. So I can tell you a little bit about that just as a learning from this. But one of the things you can do as you're researching investors is you can kind of back into their target check size. Anyone that writes a check for much less than 1% of the fund, it's an experiment. They may still do it, but if you have $1 billion plus fund that gives you 100,000 or 200,000, don't expect much because you're not impactful to that investment. Maybe if Jason was your scout and he lines you up for the A, that's great. But no one really cares until it's like 2% of the fund or something like that. It's unlikely mathematically to make a difference. It's just kind of an insider thing because all these funds look, act, and feel differently. And if the investment gets too big, if it's like 3, 4, 5% of the fund for a first check, that's like bet the farm kind of investment. So if you want $1 million and you're talking to a fund with 20 million, an angel fund with 20 million or a seed fund, it's going to be, even getting $1 million is a lot of money for them. It's 5% of the fund. So think about this like 1, 2 something percent. A lot of times is a sweet spot for a fund. For me, it's 70 million. So I'll do checks just for learning from about 500K to 4 million. And 500K is, below that 1%. But if I love the founders, no problem. Like I'll do it. That's about the smallest check I've done. And this $3.5 million or maybe $4 million check I'll write tomorrow, that one kind of needs to work. Like it won't ruin my life or I guess my track record at a Zen level. But I don't want to write off a $4 million out of a $70 million fund. And so you can just kind of think about all this in terms of, and I think the sweet spot is if you could pick the perfect investor at different stages, there's so many criteria, but one of them might be where the investment is super material to them, but like they're not going to lose their job if it doesn't go to, because nothing worse than when you have a VC and they're just going to lose their job if you don't do well. Unless it goes perfectly, that's not a fun place to be. So maybe just some math, but let me back into me and then talk to you about that niche, and then hopefully we can leave a few minutes for questions because I can explain to you some of the physics of how it works. But for me, for those of you who don't know, I have kind of a weird, quirky mix of stuff. I built this community called SaaStr, which is, I consider my day job helping other SaaS founders scale. That's what I spend about 70% of my time doing. We get about 3.5 million views a month on our content across different media. We have an event, the SaaStr Annual, which I just started doing and learning from. But we'll have 10,000 B2B fast founders come this year. We already have 1,200 and something CEOs coming already. It's next February, so that's a lot. Those are paid tickets, so it's going to be pretty big. It'll be 3 days. So a little bit, nothing like Jason. I don't even know any of the things that he knows about the media business, but we do have our own quirky part that makes no money, and an events business that has a $6 million budget that hopefully I don't lose any money on this year. And I learned that I only invest out of this community. So anyone that hasn't heard of me, I don't want to meet you. I generally don't do warm intros unless the founder has asked to meet me, unless they say, we love this community, we are at SaaStr, then I want to do it. But anyone that hasn't heard of me or doesn't want to meet me, I don't. There's plenty of folks with even bigger checkbooks, and I don't want to meet them. And just a little bit more background, then I'll dig into how I think about investments. So I've done, there's Automile right there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I guess I've done 10 venture investments, and this is missing a few angel investments, but call it a little bit more than 10 because there's 23 total. I've returned almost no capital. The only cash on cash return I have is $100 million exit, but on paper, these ones are about 4x, and these ones are a little bit more than 10x. So at least I'm not. I know a little bit of what I'm doing. Certainly enough so that a bunch of people would give me $70 million to keep going at it. And what I've learned, and what basically all the folks that were last generation SaaS founders like me learned, is this is the sucker bet for investing. Okay, bless Launch, bless Jason, bless everyone that's around here. This is revenue. Okay, you notice like Josh James sells Omniture for what, 1.8 billion. Decides he wants to do another one, Domo. If you've heard of Domo, it's not like he started Domo. He bought another company and renamed it Domo. He wasn't going to start here. Josh James started here. David Sachs, when he wanted a nice job, he didn't start another one after Yammer because, man, this is hard. He joined Zenefits. At the time, the fastest growing company in enterprise on planet Earth. So David didn't start here the next time. Josh James didn't start here next time. I don't want to start here. I want to start here. I want to start when you have a smidge of something, but it's not yet growing, right? It's not yet taking off. But this is where I feel like I have a competitive advantage. So this just happens to be a company that I invested in that presented. This is just their slide from the SaaStr annual. This is a company called Rainforest QA. They launched back here. They got a whole bunch of money from individual fancy names. It took them like almost 2 years to get this product to work. It's SaaS for functional QA. They get up to about 100K in revenue, or 8K a month. Not really very impressive growth. In fact, it looks like the second month after I invested, they had a down month, which is pretty hard to do with recurring revenue. That's pretty bad. Like, you really have to have unhappy customers if it's truly recurring to dip. But then boom, right? We go from 100K at January 15 to we just crossed 6 million, just about 6 million in, what are we in? At the end of June. So I'm looking for companies that have a chance to have a couple customers that have not already gotten super hot, to not already be left the planet, but have a chance to do this. So how is this like possible? How can you sort of achieve this hyper growth if you haven't achieved it yet?
Let me just take a quick moment to tell all the startups listening that Scott Walker is an amazing attorney. I know because a lot of my incubator companies and investments use Scott Walker, and we just had a discussion about law firms on our our secret discussion group, and people were talking about how much they love working with Scott Walker and the Walker Corporate Law Firm. They're a boutique law firm specializing in the representation of entrepreneurs and startups, and they encourage fixed fees. They believe billable hours reward inefficiency, and they just love to tell you this is what it's going to cost. How refreshing is that as an entrepreneur to not have that sticker shock, to not have that fear of opening up the PDF from your law firm and getting that ridiculous surprise that they went 3 times over. You're not going to have that happen with the Walker Corporate Law Group because they do fixed fees, and all their lawyers have a decade or 2 of experience. No junior associates who are getting on the job training with your startup. They do mergers and acquisitions, licensing arrangements, terms of service, privacy policies, and they just love working with startups. The founder, Scott Ed Walker, is a total mensch and just a lover of startups. I've known him for a long time. He comes to all my events, and he's indefatigable in his support of founders. You can give him a call right now, 415-979-9998. 415 is San Francisco, 979-9998. 9998, 979-9998, or email Scott at Walker Corporate Law, Scott at WalkerCorporateLaw.com, or visit WalkerCorporateLaw.com. And you can follow Scott Ed Walker on the Twitter, at Scott Ed Walker. And everybody go ahead and thank at Scott Ed Walker on Twitter if you're a super fan, because he has been, I think he's the longest running partner of the show. So thanks again to Scott Walker for representing my companies and doing a great job at it.
But what I've learned, and I would recommend you integrate at least the first 2 points in your pitches if we're doing some pitching prep here. I learned there's two big things I look for. First of all, I look for founders that are better than me adjusted for time. And what does that mean, right? It sounds quirky, but I think already to folks in this room, you'll know what I mean because you've been working with each other. Like there's someone that's just, I think Jason said it. I mean, he was being humble, but you said something similar at something you did, which is I was a pretty good founder, and there were all these folks that were better. You know who's better? You know that Travis was better than you. You were very successful. You still are. But as a founder, and I bet when you met Travis, you knew he was better than you. And maybe Travis, even when you met him, even if it was after Red Swish and all, maybe adjusted. He didn't know a lot of things you knew, but adjusted for time, he was better than you, right? So I look for the same thing. And this is why if you can do this one slide pitch, I think it's so powerful. If you can really convince folks in one slide why you're changing the world, why you're crazy mostly in a good way, like my eyes just light up, and I think other investors light up, right? And a slide I want to come back to is why traction's for suckers. And I think a bunch of folks said, I think Mark Andreessen said that, and a bunch of folks said it. And when I started investing, I didn't get it. I thought traction was good. But I'll come back to it, I think, and I'll tell you about my two worst investments, not by name. They had the most traction when I invested, and they're my worst investments. Traction with the founder that's not great, like eventually it's just going to stall. It's just what we're doing is just too hard, right? So I'm looking for that. And then in SaaS, here's the thing I'm looking for, and other people aren't. But this is how the way I cheat and get these companies to grow more quickly is I like to help them get more money out of each customer and more lead. Because it turned out what we all learned as SaaS founders is it's the same amount of work to sell a product that's $15,000 a year as 30, as 45, as 60. It's the same amount of work. It's the same number of demos, the same number of times to get on a jet. It's the same amount of work. And usually for a long time in most of our companies, we're lead constrained. Eventually you'll get so big that leads actually stop meaning anything. But that's like hundreds of millions in revenue. So we never have enough leads. So for most of us, if we can drive our unit economics up, that's the fastest way to accelerate. So at a personal level, my product, EchoSign, it was $15 a month. No matter how big our deals were, even when we got to 6-figure deals, even the couple of 7-figure deals, they all rolled back per user to $15 a month. So I'm hoping, if this is the type of pricing you do, I'm hoping that you can do at least 2 to 3 times better. Because then I know for the same amount of effort, you can do 2 to 3 times better than me. Or put differently, if I sold my second startup for barely 9 figures, and your unit economics are 3 times better, and you're better than me, I already know you have a chance at a unicorn, right? Because I know what it took for me to have barely a 9-figure exit the second time, and if you can get there 3 times easier than me, and you're better than me, you have a chance. So I look for this, or another way to look at it, and this was kind of like the conversation we were just having about in the company, can you get abnormally high deals? I'm not saying you have these in the beginning, but is there a chance? If you're selling to small businesses, can you get them to pay like $20,000? Most small businesses, you're going to struggle to get them to pay you like $2,000 a year, $5,000. But most small businesses will spend $20,000 a year on one product, like their own ERP, their own system of record, the 1 or 2 most important things for a small business doing $2 million in revenue a year. They can find one app to spend one B2B app to find $20,000. If you've done that, you have something that's magical. We could define an SME, but call it $50K. And then I don't consider it a real enterprise deal if it's not $250K. If it's smaller than that, if you got 5 guys at Ford to buy your product in some little division in Palo Alto for $1,500 for $10,000 a year, like that looks great on the website. You should have beers. You should celebrate. But $10,000 a month to Ford Palo Alto does not mean you close Ford, does it? Not even remotely. Did the CIO approve the purchase? Did procurement approve the purchase? So I give you no credit for enterprise until you sort of hit the six figures. And I'm expecting that in the room that you have this. But what I'm trying to wonder as an investor, are there signs that you might get there, right? And so, for example, one of the things what I love, if it's early, is let's say you have 10 customers, and 8 of them are each paying you $500 a month, $6,000 a year. But 2 of them, and you don't know what you're doing, you've never done sales. 2 of them are paying you $45,000 a year, like you're getting, or $20,000. Then I know, like, unless these are the craziest customers in the world, I can help you get more than 2. And most of the time, the founders don't know why do I have 8 that are 5,000 and 2 that are 20,000. I have an edge. I know that if I talk to those customers and they love your product, and I always ask them when I do my diligence, here's the question I ask. Okay, you pay $20,000 for this product. It's just us on the phone. Would you pay 40? And they're like, of course I would pay 40. The CEO, she doesn't know how to sell. Of course I would pay 40, right? You think I'm kidding? I have this conversation all the time, and they all tell me they would pay twice as much, right? Then I know you've got a shot to go up market. And if they'll tell me on the phone they pay twice as much, I'm pretty sure if we work together, we get like 4 to 5 times as much. So $20K a year times 4 to 5, $100K, it starts to kind of get interesting. So if we go back to this case study, this one, Rainforest, and I could do this with TalkDesk, I do with Algolia, but when I invested here, the average product for this QA as a service was about $300 a month. $100K now, $100,000 a year, right? So how the hell do you go from $300 a month to $100,000 a year? There's a bunch of steps that they outlined here, but they did have 2 customers that paid a little bit more than the others. And I asked them, like, you're paying $30,000 a year for this product. And they're like, well, it's bug-free. Like, it's full of bugs. It's full of issues. Like, it's supposed to replace my entire functional QA team. It doesn't do any of that. I'm really frustrated. It has this crowdsourced part. Okay. Would you pay more? Yes, we would pay more. like one QA engineer at my company costs $150,000 fully burdened. I would pay half of that for Rainforest just the way it is today. When I hear that magic, when I hear I'll pay half of the 150, which is 75, I know we can do routine 100K deals, right? So this is what I'm searching for. And a different version of it that I do when I work with founders, even at the most informal level, when I hear that you have this small, medium, and large segment, like I've got the small guys that pay me $200 a month, the medium guys that pay me $800, and I've got a couple big guys. There's one exercise that, whether it's for investors or whatever it is, it always works. I say, okay, you've got 2 customers that pay you $20,000. Do you have any leads at all like this? Yes, I have one more. I closed Ford, and Volvo came in. Okay, is there any difference between Ford and Volvo for this use case? No. Ask Volvo for $40K. Ford paid you $20. Ask Volvo for $40K. They're always nervous. Oh my gosh, I just got up the confidence to ask for $20,000 for this prototype hack that I built in 1 week. But you know what? 30% of the time, they'll just pay 40 because there's no difference between 40K and 20K in the Fortune 500. There's no difference. So half the time they say yes. I'll give you like 3 halves. And then half the time they'll say no. And then if they say no, you've learned that you have a ceiling today, right? You've got to, if you want to go higher than that ceiling, you've got to expand your footprint or rethink things. Or maybe you're just Dropbox. That's just your ceiling, and that's okay. But the third 50% is, okay, we won't pay twice as much for the product as it is today, but if you do A, B, and C, of course we'll pay 40 grand. That's magic. That's magic. And you'll hear this terrible advice on the internet, which is stay focused. Like don't do one-offs. Like don't do all this. That's horrible advice, even though it's completely accurate. Okay? Because what I'm looking for is the future. And if Ford says to you, well, if you just integrated with this crummy ERP system we use from 1970s, then instead of $20K, we'd pay you $250. At first, it sounds like a one-off. But if Volvo tells you that, and Mercedes and BMW and everyone in the world says, if you integrate with this 70s ERP system, we'll all pay you $250. Well, $250 times 10 is $2.5 million, and maybe they'll even pay $500,000. Like that starts to sound interesting. So the third 50%, which is no, not, but if we do this could be your future and your roadmap. And so as an investor, if I hear that, and I know that like it's pretty easy to do what they're asking for, then I know that's a bet I like to make too, because that's not that hard. Yes, if you had Salesforce integration, wow, it's so difficult to be the 7,824th app to integrate in Salesforce. I asked the team, would you build a Salesforce integration? Sure, we'll do it in a week. I'm in. Would you do a Salesforce integration? No, we'll never do it. I'm out, right? But I'm looking for these clues. So obviously I'm not going to see all of these when I invest, but these are the conversations I'm having And I'm looking if you can have an easier time than I had it. I want you to have an easier time. If you have a harder time than I had it, I'm out. If you have absolutely no leads and you've been at it for 2 years, I'm out. I don't care how much revenue you have. If you're out of ideas, I'm out. If you're burnt out and exhausted already, even if you have 20 million in revenue, I'm out. I want you, your life has to be easier than mine. This entrepreneur stuff is hard enough as it is. And so the last thing, and this is just something to think in the back of your mind for pitching, and this is not something to worry about today, but as a late seed investor, I can write a bigger check than some of the folks that come present here. I can write $500,000, million. $1 million's easy for me. $3.5 million, $4 million stressful, but I can still do it. But there ain't no way I can do 10 million for your next round. So I have to think, can I, just like Jason's doing here, can I package you up for the next guy, right? And for Jason to package you up for this Jason, you need a little bit of this, okay? You need a really great founder and 10 customers and like some good unit economics. That's how he packages it up for me. What I need to package it up for the next guy is I need to put this in context that this is the next hot search app, okay? This is bigger than Elastic. This is bigger than whatever, bigger than these other ones, with the greatest CEO that I've ever worked with this year. And I have to believe all that stuff so that when you hit 2 million in revenue, instead of the next round being at 10 pre, I can get it for you at 50 pre or 60 pre or whatever it is. And the real reason I want the pre to be high is not because I care per se, but it's so they can write a really big check so I don't have to, because I can't carry the company. So deep down, if I don't believe that you'll ever be hot, you don't have to be hot. You can get to hundreds of millions of revenue and never be hot. And you can do Qualtrics and prove everyone wrong and wait till you get to 120 million in revenue and take 150 million in all secondary financing. That's great for Ryan. Qualtrics will IPO. He will have never raised a direct dollar from venture capital, and everyone told him he was the 7,000th survey app, and he didn't care. But for me, I'm looking if you can be hot next time. The flip side is I'm totally okay if you're boring today. Like if you're the 11th data analytics app, that's okay. But I'm thinking, can I make you hot for the next guy, right? And in my own little fund, I have the next guys already as LPs. So I have Emergence Capital, I have Social Capital, I have Bessemer Venture Partners, are all direct LPs. And then I have a bunch of other guys who are individual investors, and I'm constantly thinking how to package it up. So anyhow, if I see founder better than me, interesting unit economics, and can be hot next time, I'm probably close to in. It's not like they all meet these criteria.
Let me tell you about one of my favorite services in the world. It's called Squarespace. 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I used to have to go hire a consultant to build a website, and it took months, and it cost thousands and thousands of dollars. And then when I needed a new feature or I opened it up on my iPhone, it looked terrible. And my whole life revolved around trying to make a beautiful website and had to spend literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars doing that. And then I found out about Squarespace. And if you want to create a beautiful landing page, website, or online store, you can do it on Squarespace for literally just dollars a month. I can't believe how affordable it is. And it's state-of-the-art tech, secure, stable, trusted by millions of people. Some of the most respected brands in the world use it, and I use it for every site. Why? It's beautiful, responsive, and they keep adding features. This is one of the great things about the software as a service movement that you've heard me talk about on our show. They are sitting there with, all of these customers, Squarespace, and then they say, oh, customers, what else do you want? And because they have so many customers, they can build feature after feature, but not raise the price. So it's like you're buying the service. It's like if you bought a car and they just kept adding features to it. Every day you got in your car, there was a new feature. That's what it feels like using Squarespace to me. You can go start a free trial right now. No credit card is required. You can get a free domain if you sign up for a year. So that's a great deal. And when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, use the offer code TWIST, TWIST, and you get 10% off your first purchase. I know that many of you don't need to get 10% off your first purchase. You're rich, you're baller, you're expensing this. But please, use the promo code TWIST so they know that you're a super fan of the show. And go ahead, if you really are a super fan of the show, thank @Squarespace on Twitter for making independent media like This Week in Startups possible. It's just a great product. It's a great service. And all of my team knows how to use it. And we can pop up websites all the time for the Launch Incubator, for the Launch Festival, for the Scale Conference. Everything we do, I just pop up a new website, and it looks beautiful. And then I said to my team, hey, can we put a video? I saw somebody put a video in the background of their website. And I thought, that's incredible. You go to a website and it's playing a video in the background? Gorgeous. I want that. And they're like, oh, Squarespace does that. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? They're like, well, we didn't know because they keep adding so many damn features to this product. I said, great. put on the Launch Angel Summit a picture of Napa. So they bought some stock footage for $50, and the website looks dynamite. For $50 in stock photos or stock video, we put this gorgeous video up. Amazing. And it keeps happening to me. I just love Squarespace. Thank you so much for sponsoring This Week in Startups. I really appreciate it. It means a lot that you guys and gals have been building this great product for so many years and supporting my podcast for so many years. Thank you, Squarespace. Okay, let's get back to this amazing program.
Let me just dig down to a couple of the things that I look at. And then I want to spend a couple minutes, which I didn't do at the Angel Summit. I want to talk about the things that are flags for me, that are instant turnoffs or create issues for me as a SaaS founder turned SaaS investor. So first, and I did talk about this one before for the few that were there, this is what I think I'm good at, but most VCs will not understand this, is 1 or 2 equals 10 or 20. So when you have those 2 customers out of 10, and I talk to them and they'll say they'll spend more, I know you'll get 10 or 20. And it's one thing if it was your ex-boss, and you left Ford and you set up your own company and you called your old boss at Ford, that I don't give you any credit for that customer. But if you hustled and you went down to Pacific Audi or wherever it was in LA, and you've never even really been to LA, and you got them to buy, you got 2 Pacific Audis, or what was it? Was it Audi or what was it? Pacific BMW. If you got 2 of those, which you literally did through hustle and chutzpah, I know you can get 20. I know. Like I have 100, great CEO already I know, got two of these BMWs, I know she can get 20. I don't know yet whether the market size and all of it works out. That's why I have a question mark. But I already skipped the step. We talked about skipping the steps. I already know she can get this. I'm not sure about this. This is my diligence process. But a lot of investors will view this as an anomaly. They won't give you any credit for having just 2. I think as an ex-founder, I know the difference. But you may have to convince people more that these aren't anomalies. Segment your customers, talk about them, and talk about the pipeline. And for me, another huge thing I like, having been a founder, is do you have any leads at all? Like, how many folks in this room have actual leads coming in each month, like for real, like that you don't even know? Like, that's pretty good. Because there are so many friggin' business products out there. Like, seriously, like, how often do you go home at night looking for new products for Ford? Do you do it every single night? No. I mean, leads are precious. Leads are precious. And I didn't get this as a founder myself. I could do like 100 slides and the 100 mistakes I made as a founder. The biggest one I made is I didn't value my leads enough. But when I hired my real VP of sales, my first VP of sales was a disaster. I raised my Series A. I hired the logo guy from Salesforce, 6'4" paratrooper, super strapping and handsome, talked in a deep voice. Really was good with dashboards and selling up. My board loved him. And he spent every nickel and just that I raised, and just he did worse than I did alone. Me plus 2 reps, him and 10 sold less. Okay, so that was terrible. I didn't know what to make of it. And then I'd spent all the money, and then there was this little recession coming on, like in 08, 09. I don't know if you remember. Like things seemed kind of grim. And I hired my second VP of sales from one of my customers, LinkedIn, this guy, Brendan Cassidy, who had been the first head of sales at LinkedIn. And I said, Brendan, I love you like a brother. Like we're together in this through thick and thin. I just got to tell you one thing. If you don't double sales in about 90 days, here's the math. And in Excel, we're going bankrupt. Like there's no more venture capital. And so the only way I can get this sheet to work is if we double sales in 90 days. And he did it in 60. And the magic was we had leads. He said, this is the easiest job I've ever had. I came into LinkedIn. I had no leads. Like Reed hired me. I had no leads. He did all the other jobs. You have leads. And so we could ramp that forward in time. But when I invest at this stage, I'm like, do you have any leads at all? And I do a little discovery. Why? And this is faux quantitative. But if you're getting like 20 or 30 good leads a month and your product's at least in the low 5 figures, 10K or 20K, and they're real leads. I'm not talking about contacts. I'm not talking about folks that drove by, but real leads. And let's say you can't close any of one. You can only close 1 out of the 30. That's great. I'll help you close 2 or 3. If I can help you close 3 instead of 1, and I can help you double your pricing, like we've just 6x'd your revenue stream right there. So I love, if I can see even 20 good leads a month at the stage you're at, then I kind of get really, really excited alone. Then outbound, like can you really get into the BMW dealer? Like, why would this mid-level manager at wherever take the meeting? Like, there's a story behind a story here, because no one wants to take another friggin' meeting, right? There are exceptions, but no one really wants. So why is this working, right? And maybe that 2 is 200, because the story behind the story could be interesting. So that's an interesting story from today. And then just 2 other things, if it's helpful. And I'm quirky, but one great thing is if they're not all technology companies. This is a little joke for the insularity of YC, right? Because you can launch out a YC with 130 folks in your class and have 100 companies that are all like just from yourself. It's a strange beast, and it's not all a bad thing. I mean, sometimes it is good. But that's the most. It's not just all in tech. This is like all my class of 180. Like this is the most. This is the. If it's early and you have some anomalous customers that aren't in tech, that or at least that aren't on the West and East Coast, that's super interesting to me. Like, why did this boring company from wherever, from the Four Corners or somewhere, find your little app? And there's no reason that they should trust anyone in this room. Why should I trust you with my data? Why should I trust you with my business processes? Why should I do anything? And why should I take a risk on a new vendor? To me, these customers are like 10 times more valuable than just tech, and like 50 times more valuable than this insularity of purchase. So I get real excited if you even have like 1 or 2 out of the first 10 or whatever, 3 or 4 out of the first 30 or 40, because then I see a pattern to do even better. And the last thing I want is the 11,000th sales automation tool that just sells to other SaaS companies. Like, I get it, but I'm just like, that seems too risky to me. And so I go through this analysis, and then what this lets me do is one thing. Then I can quickly say, okay, if I help you get a VP of sales and a VP of marketing, really, and this is really demand gen, then can we tilt the curve? Can we have this happen? Because if you've got the 30 leads a month and you don't know how to raise your pricing and you don't know how to do anything, if I give you a VP, help you get a VP of sales, or give you one, he or she can close more of those leads, and he or she can ask for more money without getting all nervous or without worrying about breaking the relationship. A great VP of sales knows how to ask for the exact maximum amount of money without breaking the relationship and without harming your NPS. Founders are terrible at this. Founders are really good at about getting 40% of the deal size out of deals. That's what you're real. Same with me. You don't want to break it. It's so hard. You want the goodwill, right? And like, I probably could get it 90K out of, BMW of Garden Grove, but I don't want to make Linda mad, right? And I know that I just 45, like that's all I want to do. But a great VP of sales it's 90 grand, right? And he or she will know when 90 grand is a lot of money, because this is like the worst BMW dealer in Southern California, or this is the one that's crushing it, and 90 grand's nothing. Like, the great VP of sales knows this. So if I give you this person and I help you hire a demand gen person so you get more leads, like, can we reproduce this? This is what I'm looking for. And a quirky thing that I do, which most VCs almost know, some VCs have recruiting partners, but I will commit to giving you these people in the first 60 to 90 days. I have these people and I will give them to you. I don't have a recruiting partner. I don't have any of this. I will source these candidates for you that you like. And so that's how I can do this. And then the last thing, and then I want to make sure that we have time to do the flip side. Here's where I walk. I walk all the time. Is the CEO now that we have 10 customers completely insanely committed to sales, right? Or do you really just want to sit in front of a monitor? And I don't think it's true of folks in this room based on any of the presentations I have here, but I don't think any of the founders here that I heard were classically trained in sales. Sales sucks unless you love it. It's being told no again and again and again. It's brutal. It's hard. Sales is kind of fun when there's 10 other guys in the sales pit and you're all crushing quota and driving a brand new M6 or Tesla, and you're all like making bank. Like, that's kind of fun. Even if you hear no all day long, like you're all still kind of crushing it. And if you've ever been in that environment, which I have, or you built one, it's amazing, right? That's when sales teams get really good, is when everyone's killing it together. But it's hard, and a lot of especially folks that are engineers, that are developers, they don't really want to do sales. And there are many examples where you can have a freemium business and have a self-serve business. It just ain't me, because I can't do this. I can't reproduce. I can't take what was a developer-centric sales-free product at $300 a month that no one would buy and make it a developer-centric, sales-driven product that's very easy to sell at 100K, right? Impossible to sell. Recurring revenue declines without a sales team. And then when we go from, 100K to 6 million in revenue in 15 months. But this happens a lot. And so I'm looking for those signs. And it's okay to say that you don't know sales, but that doesn't actually mean you're not committed to sales. It's a different nuance that I'm looking for. And so I don't think that's a bad thing to hear. It may be a little bit too honest. But I want to hear and smell the commitment. So let me just finish up on this, and then I don't know if we have time for questions or I can dig on some other things. But let me do the flip side. I thought about this after the Angel Summit at Launch Festival. What are the sub-metrics or the other signs that are flags for me? And I've done 23 investments. I have one per. I don't really have batches, but one per batch that I regret of each that I regret. And they're for different reasons, but both of them had close to the most traction at the time I invested. So traction isn't necessarily for suckers, but the problem with traction is it can lead you to overlook other flags and flaws in the investment. So number one flaw for me, it's the flip side of being committed to sales. It feels sales is too expensive. So the worst investment I did is a company that just crossed 17 million in ARR. I invested at about 800K in revenue. So 800K to 17 million doesn't sound that bad, does it? But the reason this one as a VC is a failure is it will never be a unicorn. It will never be a unicorn. And the reason is the team wasn't committed enough. The founders were, first of all, they were tired, which we'll come to. Most importantly, I gave them the VP of sales and the first sales rep, and the VP of sales came in and he killed it. And these were founders who were borderline bootstrap. They were making like 80K a year or whatever they're making. And the VP of sales I gave them on the comp plan almost immediately made $350,000, $400,000 a year. And the founders started yelling at each other and fighting. And they had founders that were in the US and in Europe. And in Europe, they were paid even less. And I'm sacrificing in Europe. I'm making 40K. And this kid, who's a little insolent telling us what to do in sales is making how much? And we're so you have to believe that sales is cheap. You have to make this commitment. It's going to seem, if you do sales right, you make your money back in 3 or 4 months, right? You want to pay your sales team an insane amount of money, and you want them to deliver an insane amount of revenue back. But believe it or not, most people don't do this. And if I even hear a hint that I don't want my sales people to make more money than me, or if I hear a hint that I don't want to pay reps too much money, I'll pay the VP of sales, but the reps have to be I want to pay them under market, especially in your Bay Area. It's hopeless, right? It's too competitive. So no way. If I even smell any of this, I quit. Here's another one that I learned. This is going to sound weird, but I'm fairly sure whatever financials anyone has in this room are terrible. I'm fairly sure you haven't been through an audit. I don't think you have. I don't even know who the auditors are anymore. Does Ernst & Young still exist? I don't know who they are. Whoever you are, you if you're lucky, you bought some service like Bench or something to help you, and they're terrible, right? And almost all these outsourced folks don't know how to do recurring revenue, so they all get it wrong. So your financials are terrible, and I don't expect the financials to be accurate. I don't expect them. But what I've learned is if they're ridiculously stupid, there's something wrong in how you're thinking about the business. So number one, I see 100% gross margins. Believe it or not. So the second worst investment I did. The founders were convinced they had 100% gross margins, no matter how much I talked to them. And I wrote that off. I thought, okay, well, they don't need to have a MFA or CFA or CPA or whatever. It doesn't matter. But what I realized is it wasn't enough commitment to understanding operations in their business. And this company fell off the rails. It's still doing a couple $1 million in revenue now. But if it's really wrong, if they have a services and software component, as a lot of companies do, if they don't understand the different margins and the different characteristics. What was the alumni presentation we got? Yeah, that was great. It's okay, we got 40% margin in this segment, right, in the services business, and 85% in the SaaS. Now, 85% isn't really possible either, but anyhow, whatever it is, that's what I want to hear, right? But if I don't hear that, something's wrong, right? That's something that you have to understand. This incompetent, numbers that aren't even remotely sane show the founders don't understand how business works. That's scary as an investor. right? The fact that you're not really sure whether customer success goes here, you can't get this right, or those I don't even care. So this sounds weird, but these are the ones that I'll never ever do again. Third one, not an issue for this room, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But there's a whole thing around with investors, especially sandhill investors, about the CEOs moving here, right? And I don't care. I don't care if they move here. I have a lot of opinions. I actually don't think it really matters in SaaS unless it's really enterprise sales. But I can't help. So if the CEO isn't going to move here, isn't here, I quit. And I've done good investments in New York. I've done okay investment in Chicago. But actually, if the CEO isn't in the Bay Area, I can't help you with the management team. So I'm just out, right? And I don't think that's an issue here, is it?
A lot of people here.
From where?
Portland.
So I'm out. LA, Portland, I'm out.
Yeah. LA and
Right.
Seattle. I think
I'm
everybody
out.
else is here. Texas.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out, right? I don't care if your whole dev team is in wherever, is in Antarctica or wherever it is, Chile. I don't care. I don't care if everyone but the CEO isn't here. But if the CEO isn't here, and it's not just the executive talent per se, although that's true. It's just I can't give you the people. I can't meet my social contract to give you that VP of sales and marketing. I tried with Greenhouse in New York. I've tried with other ones. I just don't have, the talent pool is too thin, and I don't want to be a fungible source of capital. But it's a different reason than because it's just like too far, which is the real reason most VCs don't want to do it. So this last one, which I don't know how true it will be here because of the type of companies, but this is the one that doesn't work in SaaS. It just doesn't work. This is what I learned. It's when the CEO's tired. Here's what I learned. I was an entrepreneur. I sold my first company for $50 million after 12 and a half months. I sold my second company for 100 and something million after 5 years. I made a lot more money the second time, mainly because I owned a lot more. I was the largest shareholder. But if I'm honest about why I sold, there are a lot of sub reasons. I lament selling. I don't regret it. I lament it. But the team was tired. I was tired too, but the team was tired. I had a zero attrition policy. I didn't let anyone leave. No one was ever allowed to leave, ever. And so I added people, we taught people, but we had the same team for 5 years, and people got tired. And this is hard. And so if I see a hint of exhaustion, like I can't make it kind of tiredness, I totally empathize. Like I get it, but I'm out because this is, and in SaaS it's harder because just after 5 years, I just wrote about this, you usually get into your third management team, right? You get going, you get to the second year, you finally recruit your first VPs. Some of them don't work out. You have to replace them. Get up to wherever, 10 million, 8 million, 20 million, some number, and the engine's finally working. And then some of those guys didn't scale or they get tired and you got to bring in a whole nother, and it's hard. It's hard. And you have to spend like half your time recruiting people constantly. And it's even harder in SaaS than it is in a lot of consumer stuff because you as CEO have to do sales, marketing, customer success, product, and often engineering. It's 5 functional areas at a minimum that you have to be constantly passively recruiting VPs, SVPs, C of this, C of that. And unless you're totally committed to it, it's hard. I mean, look at Box. Like, Box is a great company. Like, basically the whole senior management team just turned over again. Okay, SVP of engineering left, sales left, all of them. Aaron at 390 million in revenues got to pick himself up and go recruit his 6th management team. Box was founded in 2004, so we're 12 years out, right? That's hard. And so if you're tired, there's no friggin' way you're going to pull this off. And so best case, you're going to sell early for a cheap price, and then I can't make any money. Right? I don't care if you sell earlier for a cheap price, but for the right reasons, I'm cool. But if you're exhausted, then it's inherent a ceiling to my investment. So again, that first investment that I did that is at 17 million with these founders that were bickering and all of this, they got tired after 5 years and they brought in an outside CEO, took a terrible, terrible venture deal. A very opportunistic VC came in, met them. They were doing like 6 or 7 million at the time. It was going well, and offered each of the founders $1 million, like a used car dealer, like laying it on the table. He looked at them and he saw they're tired. He said, "I'll give you each $1 million. Only have 2, and you can just take it. I only have 3 conditions. First of all, I need to buy half the company. Second of all, I also need to put in my own CEO. And third, we're moving the company to New York. And they were tired. And these founders had nothing in the bank, right? Certainly my first startup, I had nothing in the bank. My first startup, I had to sign a $750,000 full recourse note to the VCs, and I didn't even have $10,000 in savings. Okay, these guys got this million, but this opportunistic VC bought half the company at 30 million pre, gave them some money. It's a terrible venture deal, right? We'll make some money on it, but I don't want to deal with tired. I want to deal with folks that are going for it. And if you end up selling for 10 billion or $10 or whatever, that's great. But I don't want that. I don't want to take the $1 million lined up like for the. I mean, you ever in the old days that's still how they do the used cars. They come there, this at Ford. They come. You don't know from Ford, but they would. You would list. They probably still do it on Craigslist. You list your car on Craigslist, and these guys come with like a wad of cash, and they line it up on your driveway. And they say, the car's worth $8,000. They're like, yes, but I'll have $4,000 lined up here. And that's how you make money. VCs do this too, it turns out. They do it a lot. It's a different way VCs can make big VCs can make a lot of money on medium outcomes. If you own half the company, and even if you're a $1 billion VC and the company exits for $250 million, if you make 125, that's material, right? Okay, the last one, and then this is just this is my quirky thing as a founder now investing in founders. In SaaS, I will never, ever, ever invest in someone I wouldn't work for. And again, there's just too many people to hire. And I'm not saying that necessarily I would literally work for them today, but think about this in terms of how you present yourself, how you act, how you are. I know you're going to have to hire so many people. I know that as soon as you hit just even $1 million in revenue, this is a recruiting game. This is about it. So if I would work for you, I know you have a chance. First of all, I know I can get other people to work for you. I can recruit them for you, and I believe you can do it. If you're just too difficult to work with, if you're too selfish, if you're too focused on something, and I wouldn't work for you, I quit. Other investors will think differently. This doesn't mean that you have to. I've invested in founders with I don't know how you measure EQ, 100, and one of my best investments, the founder may have a 0 EQ, but I would still work for him because he's so driven and crazy insane, and I love him like a brother. It doesn't need to mean I need to be hugged. But anyhow, this is where I quit. So I guess I don't know how to summarize all of this, but I guess what I would say to folks in this room, because so many folks already have a tiny bit of traction, a few customers, a little bit of revenue, carry yourself and act like the CEO that you want to be, right? Be the CEO. Don't be the CEO that you want to be at 300 million in revenue, but carry yourself and act like you're going to be the CEO in 2 years. Have confidence to go to all those other auto dealers and go in because I'm the friggin' CEO, right? And we can make fun of that Mark Zuckerberg business card, but you know what? Customers all want to meet with the CEO. This is another secret in SaaS. 2-person company. Customers love at Ford. Let me introduce you. This is Linda. She's the CEO of they like to meet the CEO, don't they? They don't even care if it's 2-person or 200,000 person, right? Everyone wants, so take advantage of this. Act like the 2 million or 10 million ARR CEO. Act like it with customers and you'll learn that you sell better. Act like it with investors. It doesn't mean being arrogant. It doesn't work with investors, but act like that CEO in 2 years with the fluidity in your business model, the fluidity in your margins, the fluidity in your hiring plan, the fluidity of everything. And when you act like that, your odds of getting funded by me or almost anyone go way up. So that's all I had here. Do we have, are we over?
Perfect. Let's take 2 questions from our audience here.
Yeah.
Who's got a question? We'll run a microphone. Troy's got a microphone.
How do you think that the SaaS landscape is going to change over the next 5 years?
Good question.
Which part? Yeah, I can answer. Any part of the landscape you're interested in? Is it funding? Is it revenue, competition, or what's on your mind?
What types of companies will be successful and kind of what their success will look like and how that's different than it is today or was 5 years ago?
Well, let me answer at least one part of that question that is sometimes discouraging, but it's a fact. The SaaS markets are so much bigger than they were 3 to 4 years ago, and they're probably maybe 3 orders of magnitude bigger than when I started with Aaron leaving. I mean, maybe 4 orders of magnitude bigger. So there's good and bad. The good news is if you're in a space with white space, you can grow faster. The good news is that niches that used to be niches can now be huge, right? So things that used to be tiny spaces now can be worth hundreds of millions in revenue. So many great things about the markets being bigger. The flip side is the bar is much higher. So, for example, when I raised my series, it was called the Series B, but it would really be an A today because my seed wasn't, we didn't used to even have a series seed. When I raised my B, which was an A, the bar to getting from Emergence Capital, which was like the most famous SaaS investor, you know what the bar was? Salesforce customers. There were only like 11 of us in 2007 that had any material. I had 60 Salesforce customers in the App Exchange. I had 60. There were like a couple others that had 50, and then there were a couple that had 3. They were like, how many folks have Salesforce? Like thousands and thousands. So I'm being a little facetious, but I'm actually not being facetious. The bar today for what we call a Series A is $2 million or more in recurring revenue, growing 10% a month or more quickly. That's the friggin' bar. 2 million and 10%. That's a pretty high compounding rate. I didn't achieve it. Aaron Levy didn't do it back in the day. Then they took off. No one did it. No one did it. And so the flip side of the markets being bigger is once like people are still as impatient or patient for a product market fit, but once that happens, the bars, the expectations are much higher. And yes, people will pay higher prices and they'll fund more. So on TechCrunch, you see these bigger rounds, but no one's an idiot, right? They're investing on even higher expectations of growth and traction than we even saw a few years ago. So it's good and bad, right? But what's tough, the death knell for a Series A in SaaS is $1 million in revenue growing like 6 or 7% a month. That's like no man's land. And it's like, it's terrible. Like that may compound to 100% year over year growth, 1 to 2 to 4. Like it just, you're going to get nobody, right? And you're not even going to get another seed investor to go because you've lost that hope moment, right? You're kind of, what's that? Oh, sorry. No. Yeah. So that's the flip side. The bar's gone up.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Somebody had a microphone on. Okay, one more question. Who else has a question? All right. So this was amazing. You lived up to the billing of one of the hardest working investors. You certainly put a ton of effort into it. And this has been probably the best talk of the semester, I would think. A lot of people are nodding. So really well done, Jason. And we appreciate you being here.
Thanks for everyone.
Round of applause.
Thanks for the time.